This is fantastic. Now we can do the opening the way that it should be done.
There you go.
VP Ward, President-elect Larry Ward, it is an honor to speak with you today.
It is an absolute honor to speak with you as well. I have enjoyed our interactions throughout I think my time overlapped pretty neatly with yours at Babson, save a year. So I'm delighted to be able to spend a little bit of time with you today. Thank you for the invitation.
So, to orient ourselves, my channel is about entrepreneurs in interesting places, typically people that have dealt with a lot of adversity, people that don't fit the mold, or the context is challenging, or they're missing some critical, essential need as they build a new organization with a creative solution. And so, what the heck does that have to do with your life? Well, here's what I was thinking was the connection. We just pre-gamed this, and you agreed that there is a connection.
Yeah.
You've had to be an entrepreneurial leader yourself. You sometimes don't have everything you need. You sometimes must have hellish days that we can't imagine.
Yeah.
And so the first question is this appropriate to post this recording on my Extreme Entrepreneurship YouTube channel? Do you feel like an extreme entrepreneur on some days?
I do. I certainly feel like an extreme entrepreneurial leader. Um, when I think about the challenges that come back to Babson, when I think about the challenges that lie ahead for me at University of Hartford, um, it's going to take turning things on its side, looking at it from a different perspective, being obsessive about new opportunities, um, convincing an institution culturally to buy into a greater level of transparency, changing muscle memory from hoarding or holding on to information and being highly, highly selective about who gets to see it, whether or not there's anything proprietary about that information or not, and changing culturally the muscle memory to be, I'm going to share this with my colleague because in sharing it, they may see possibilities that I don't see, and that'll lead us to better solutions. And then fundamentally, strengthening the financial posture of an institution, because the critical resource that is missing or most needed, probably beyond leadership, those resources are financial, right? So, but you can't do it all on the backs of students in terms of tuition. Yes, enrolling more students will help. Raising funds privately through philanthropy, through alumni giving, engaging the business community, all of those are entrepreneurial opportunities that the university cannot be successful without entrepreneurial leadership. In my judgment, I think that's one of the reasons why they turned to me as the seventh president.
So to recap some of your career highlights, and then we'll recap some stuff that we've already talked about. Um, you're you've been vice president at Babson College, focused on the student life experience,
Yeah.
the student conduct,
Yeah.
student success, and
Mhm.
now you're going to be president of the University of Hartford.
Right.
You have a leadership role with the NCAA.
Yeah.
You mentioned being on the board of a small Catholic college. Is that correct?
Yeah. Board of Trustees. Yeah. Alberta Magnus College in New Haven, Connecticut.
Anything else that you have going on?
Hmm. Yeah, I serve on the board of advisors of Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Needham, um, and a small sort of entrepreneurial venture capital venture called Seacrest Advisors. Um, and so that's super interesting as well. So a little bit going on in my life. Always try to align myself with you know organizations that would benefit from my worldview and the way I think about problems and address challenges. So yeah, a little bit going on for Lair there.
Okay, so we got a recap of why we invited you. We got a recap of what you do in your life right now, the
Yeah.
challenge coming up, which is being president.
Yeah.
Thanks for filling in a big question some people might have, or answering it rather. What does running a university have to do with entrepreneurship? Well, it might be, as some people say, academia can be a medieval institution. That's the way it seems sometimes.
Yeah.
And yet you have to make the numbers work. You have to pay for things. And you can't, as you say, put it on the backs of students always. So thanks for clarifying how an academic leader is an entrepreneurial leader, how it can be extreme. One of my questions from before that I'd love to get on this recording, one of your answers was the answer to my first question, which was, uh, how are you so widely loved? So many people within the Babson community. Um, Oh, and we got a warning. We got 10 minutes. So, what was? Do you want to repeat your answer to why you think people have an affinity to you? Why you're a popular leader? What do the University of Hartford faculty, staff, and students have to look forward to?
Yeah, I think for me, one is I'm not ever really trying to be anything other than authentically myself, and giving others the space to be authentically themselves with me. Curiosity for me is a mode of traveling through the world, to be innately curious about others. What is it that has brought Adam to this space versus what brought Larry to this space? And asking those kinds of questions. And so I think oftentimes we don't take an interest in others. We're so busy trying to share what our agenda is, or we're super insecure, or we're leading with ego, right? We're leading with a sense of grandiosity, meaning I know everything I need to know about this person in front of me, versus curiosity, that you don't give others the space to feel comfortable in sharing. And so my approach is to lead with curiosity, to be authentically myself, and to take a deep interest in the community where I serve, where I work, and where I live. And so that has been well received by a lot of folks. I'll consider that I've had some good years. I imagine I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but being your authentic self allows me to sleep at night.
I think those were the two words that stuck in my mind. Is there is no thing that you're doing that you can identify as, oh, now I'm being Larry Ward. It's being authentic and it's staying curious about other people. And I think that was sensed from the beginning of our first interaction.
Now,
You also, I asked you,
I will say there are three things that I have tried consciously to do as a leader.
okay, okay,
One is to speak truth to power, which isn't
mhm,
easy, but sometimes it's fun. To give voice to those who have no voice or haven't yet learned to use their voice or gotten comfortable using their voice
mhm,
in serving others. And so I do pay careful attention to when it requires me to do one of those three things, or to do a couple of them at the same time. And those often require courage to be able to do. And so leading with courage, I think, is also something that others see in me, that they value and that they appreciate.
thanks for rounding that out. There was something else that came up. I asked you about having hard conversations.
Yeah.
And you want to summarize it? There was a bunch of gems in there
Yeah.
about not interjecting yourself. You want to continue on that?
Yeah, having difficult conversations, particularly in the context of students or students who may find themselves in trouble. That's the line that we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I said,
When somebody says really, when somebody does something really stupid or hurtful.
yeah, yeah, and that violates the college's expectations for community, right? Our
Right.
community standards, our expectations. So one is not to make it about myself. Students don't do anything to me as a senior leader, as a dean, as a person who's responsible for conduct and um, adjudicating whether or not someone has violated the community's expectations. Not making it about yourself.
Mhm.
Number two, not dehumanizing someone after they've had their worst day or shown their worst behavior. The behavior itself needs to be addressed. And it may well require that they have to leave this community. But it never requires dehumanizing someone. And the other piece is I always try to still be in dialogue, you know, with a student that finds themselves in some jeopardy, even a student that has been suspended or dismissed. I have often maintained a relationship with that young person, because while I believe in second chances, you're not always afforded a second chance at this institution or in this community. But I do feel a sense of perhaps there is a time down the road where I can be helpful to them as they develop and grow and learn to be successful in another community. And I just think that's really important.
If anybody knows that I'm moving around, it's because I am literally entering my credit card information so we don't get logged out in less than 5 minutes now.
Okay. All right.
So I'm updating my Zoom account as we speak, and not to take away from what you're saying. In fact, to build on it, one of the things that struck me when I asked the follow-up question I asked, so is there a limit? Is there a limit to hating the act but not the person? And you said something very insightful. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah. You asked me, is there ever a point where, you just don't want
It's
it?
po-
Yeah.
yeah, where it's
I don't
impossible
want
to love this
anything else to
person.
do with the person. Yeah. And I think what I said is, there are people who, when given the chance, will always remind you what a colossal asshole they are. They never miss the chance, and they're consistent about it. And there does come a point where, like, you know what? I'm actually done. I don't think that you're a good person. I don't think that you are worthy of my time or interest. And I've got to move on from you. I really don't want anything else to do with you. However, it doesn't require making that decision, doesn't require dehumanizing that person, even though my instincts might want to lead me to give him one last, ass whooping and take that with you. um, More often than not, that will become about me and not about them, and I'll be the one that feels badly for it. So I
And
think I
making
said
sure we
something
come.
along those lines.
Yeah, yeah, no, you got it. And the way to be consistent. It was also, I think we established it was an unintended test of authenticity. And I divulged, I shared one of our first interactions where I first appreciated you 9 years ago was when, in one of our early interactions, we were very candid about some information, and it was not all sunshine. It was not all wonderful, good, lovey things that you shared, and so it was partly, just to establish the through line from the moment I met you. You've pulled off having a certain panache and smoothness, even though you can be candid and share when there's information that needs to be shared. That's uh, not all pleasant and roses.
But isn't that that's part of the authenticity? Like, using it in a language. I mean, I'll be honest, I love colorful language. I love profanity. I love good cursing. I don't like cursing just to be cursing, but
Yeah,
people who know how to swear well, I have just great appreciation for that. I grew up listening to Richard Pryor records and Red Fox and later Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock and all of my sort of heroes of black comedy. So I do like someone who can be wonderfully and like creatively profane. However, I do think that there's a sense of intelligence that gets paired with that versus just demeaning someone, right? Like that's not even creative, right? Poking
yeah,
fun at someone just to so that they feel badly about themselves. I don't really have
yeah.
much patience for that.
And to build on one thing, I want to make sure we got this all in. You
But
mentioned,
let me make a point because I think it goes to your fundamental question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
When a leader describes shit the way it needs to be described, just says it the way it needs to be said in a way that is unmistakable, that's unambiguous, that's very, very clear, maybe or maybe not punctuated with a good F-bomb, I think it increases people's trust in that leader. They're like, you know what? That guy just said it the way it needs to be said. Didn't try to dress it up, didn't wasn't overly and unnecessary diplomatic, what's the new term? Wasn't toxically optimistic, right? Now, look, you can't just criticize and then not have anything to do about it. So a good leader says, okay, and now here's what I think we need to do about it.
right. Excellent. And there's one other thing about having awful conversations, whether it's letting people go, um, telling them that they messed up, whatever the tough conversation is. You said number one, don't make it about you. Two, you shared something about also keeping a certain level of dispassion, not getting too passionate.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, yeah, you want to elaborate or
Yeah,
we can move on?
sure. So I got that in my first year at Babson. I had a just a wonderful staff member who was responsible for community standards, and this person was really, really passionate about the work, like earnestly passionate about the work, and holding students accountable, particularly around issues of gender-based misconduct in Title IX,
Yeah,
as one should. And I remember a conversation when I said, sometimes you have to bring some dispassion to this work, and that your passion can sometimes cloud your judgment. Your passion can sometimes allow you to overreact and to not see alternatives, right? Or to say, how does this person learn to develop and grow beyond this incident, right? And so I think it's the dispassion for me, and bringing a sense of dispassion to the work has really been helpful because I think it allows me to be tremendously objective and see both sides of an issue or see multiple perspectives on an issue. Now, I may have to land on one side or another, but I at least want to be able to see and appreciate multiple perspectives. And dispassion often allows me to do that.
that's thanks for actually elaborating on what you said before. It makes even more sense when you when you highlight that maintaining some level of being dispassionate allows the opening for other perspectives to be at least heard, even if they're not ultimately agreed with, um, which has a lot of virtues, among them not being wedded to a solution that turns out not to have been the most optimal. Um, Along those lines, any guidance for entrepreneurial leaders doing anything, whether it's founding a startup, leading an institution that's been around for 100 years, about making tough decisions, about making a tough call, especially when your people are going to be divided. So, what can your cabinet expect, President-elect Ward, as you enter this new role, the next chapter of your life? What do you do when there's a split vote in the room? There are even maybe some passion, some high stakes, some high consequences. What can people foresee about how you make that impossible to make decision, that tough to make call?
Yeah. Uh, Excellent question. So I think I think the thing that people really react to isn't so much the decision. Of course, there's a tough decision that needs to be made. It's not unanimous. Or worse, everybody in the room wants to do X, but you as a leader think that Y is the right way. Whatever it is. Just because no one agrees with you doesn't mean that you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And is this a we decision or is this a me decision? If it's a me decision, then I'm ultimately want to be driven by a set of values, right? Or objectives. What am I trying to achieve? What are the consequences of making the wrong decision or making a bad decision? I really do want to be driven by my values. Often what happens is there is no policy, there is no rule book. You're beyond going to a book and getting the decision that you should make, right? You're usually either in some gray area or some uncharted area. And then the University of Hartford could expect that I'm going to make decisions that are value based. And those are either going to be institutional values or they're going to be leadership values that I subscribe to. That's what I'm going to lean in because that's what you're left with at the end of the day. Now, if it's the wrong mistake, I mean the wrong decision, if the decision turns out to be a mistake, then damn it, you got to take ownership and say, you know what, this was my decision. As it turns out, it's the wrong decision. This is what I'm thinking. It did not turn out that way. Take ownership, and here's how I recommend that we fix it. And that may be, damn it, do not let me make this decision again. Grab me by the face mask and say, hey, remember the last time you were so committed to making this? And usually what happens is you perhaps missed something, or you didn't listen enough, potentially, or sometimes shit just doesn't go your way. What you can't do is take ownership for a decision. It doesn't go well, and then say, "Oh, well, things happen. It's not really my fault," and all that. That's not leadership. But leaders do that all the time.
Two lines of questions before I forget. One that I want to ask is uh, easy to say I make decisions based on values. I wonder if we pressed you, what values make you different than other college or university presidents? Which ones you might list off? So let's let that one um, maybe percolate or whatever the right word is.
Yeah.
While I ask you another question,
Yeah.
because now you finally gave me a connection to the law courses that I teach, that all of us have to teach.
Yeah.
Law 1000 covers law, but we also have to cover ethics. And there's basically two calculuses or calculi
Yeah.
for ethical reasoning. One is duty based, right? Kantian ethics. The idea that you decide what the world would be like if everybody followed a certain value. If the world is a good place, then we must embrace that value. An extreme manifestation might be total pacifism because killing is bad. The world would be awful if people killed when they decided it's the right thing to do. Therefore, we can never kill. The other line of reasoning is we look at the consequences of a decision. Yeah, killing's bad, especially killing innocent people is bad. But then how do people justify dropping nuclear weapons at the end of World War II? The argument is, well, it prevented more death, and therefore it was ethically right to drop nuclear weapons. Some people will argue that. So I'm not saying which form of reasoning I agree with. A lot of students, when we teach this stuff, say, well, it depends on the situation. I guess I might buy into both lines of thinking. So my question, and we're going to come back to your values, uh, are you saying that you really are purely a sort of a duty-based uh, reasoning person? Or will there be situations where you look at the costs and the benefits and you say, you know what, this compromises our values, but we have to do this because you know what, we're gonna take this backer, this financial backer of research for University of Hartford, because look how much good we can do with it. We might find a cure for a disease.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to take some money from that entity. It violates my values, but the outcomes are going to be so good for the world, for students, for faculty, staff, that we got to do it. Can anybody ever expect you to say, you know what, these are our values, but in this case, the payoff is so good that on this occasion we'll part with our values.
Mm, I would hope not, to be perfectly honest. But the short answer is I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't imagine every situation. There are some things where you have to hold your nose and go with a decision that's a little distasteful. I've certainly been in that situation before. But more often than not, I don't remember a time where it actually violated my sense of integrity. It just may not be something that I didn't really agree with, or a person, or a direction that I wasn't really over the moon with. But I
Mm-hmm.
saw that there was greater benefit in holding my nose and going with it than standing on some fake principle and not going with it, right? So there are those situations, but I don't ever recall a situation where it was just like, okay, I'm going to compromise my own integrity because this is going to have great material value to the institution, or worse, to me, right? Like there is a situation where you walk up to a point where you have to be ready to walk away from a job. And so those values for me begin and start with integrity. And I believe in my own professional integrity and also institutional integrity. And that comes directly from my parents, and especially my father, who was a home improvement contractor, and really believed in this notion of integrity. He would put in I remember he was working with a client that had a kitchen fire, and smoke had damaged the entire kitchen, and he restored the kitchen, but they couldn't afford new appliances, and the appliances had been smoke damaged on the outside but were perfectly functional on the inside. But they just couldn't afford new appliances, and my father bought them new appliances, and I remember asking him why he bought new appliances, and didn't that cut into his profit? And he said to allow old appliances to be part of a new and restored kitchen would upset the integrity of the kitchen. And that's how committed he was to integrity, and it has always stayed with me. I believe in excellence. I believe in the pursuit of excellence. I believe in quality. I've already talked about authenticity. Um, and so, yeah, I love cost benefit analysis. If you can bring me data that leads us to one set of solutions or decisions versus another, then I'll
Mhm.
go with the data. I think what I was talking about before is when all of that runs out, you've looked at the data, you've looked at all of the evidence, and it's still unclear what the decision should
Mhm.
be. That's when I'm going to lean on those values.
Okay. And thanks for clarifying that. That just because you want to lead with values in an ambiguous situation doesn't mean that you don't do a cost benefit analysis, that you're not data driven.
Yeah, yeah. And hell, I also go looking for an alternative perspective. I go looking for the devil's advocate. I was like, please, someone make the case of why we should do this, because I'm not seeing it.
I like that, and I think we could use more of that at every level all the time. Of just how are we wrong in our thinking about this? What perspective are we not seeing?
Yeah,
Uh,
I just
so
need to
asking
give
somebody,
a quick I got a call at 11:10. I just want to make
we can wrap up.
we'll just wrap up, but I'll just give myself a few extra minutes. Okay.
We're
Um,
gonna cover chat. We got to leave some time for chat.
yes.
We've got to cover that. We will end on that. So are you gonna ask people in meetings? Hey, please, we got a flow going. We got some group think going. Great to have all this consensus. Could somebody please break up the consensus? Could we have in a week all the arguments why we're screwing this up and what are all the alternatives? Are you going to do that?
Yeah, it's an important part of how I lead. I think it's also an
Mhm.
important part of allowing discordant voices into a decision process, right? So we may have to decide once a decision is made to all get on board. But yeah, I will often go in search of, sing me a different song, and let me see if I can feel it. You know, I think that's really important in getting out of your normal circles, right? I think one of the reasons I've been successful here is my ability, very rarely do I run into you coming to my office. I'd see you on the street, right? Walking from one point A to point B, but that didn't include, oh, I'm going to stop and see Adam. I just stopped and saw you, but I stopped and visited with you, right?
No,
And
it's a huge
in
point.
those visits, you might get a different perspective, especially if I say, hey, let me run something by you.
I want to underscore something huge. You haven't highlighted in this conversation quite as much being a person of color, but I think you mentioned the previous one that we were recording that it is part of what informs your approach to people and to stay curious, even if they have been marginalized or written off or might not seem at first glance to fit your mold of somebody that's bringing value, that you're curious and you stay curious. I really want to highlight that because it's one of the things that you've never said that before, but I could just tell that you were open and curious about the other person, even if you didn't know them that well. Um, and I think it's worth highlighting. It's worth repeating. Do I have all that right, by the way? What I
Yeah,
just repeated.
you do. You do. It's what I mean by curiosity being a mode of travel and how you travel through the world, not simply a destination or, and certainly the higher up you go in an organization, right? So not just as a dean or as a vice president, but now as a president, it's even more important to travel through the world, being just fundamentally curious about how things operate and taking the time. I mean, I might sit down with someone, walking through my day, management by walking around, which is a old concept, old management concept.
Mhm.
But if I stop in someone and I sit down for 2 minutes, just two
Mhm.
minutes, it will
Mhm.
feel like 15, right?
Today, absolutely.
If I just stand there and it'll feel like 30 seconds, right? I feel like you just you couldn't wait to get away. So there are just little things that you can do to signal your sense of curiosity, including a quick follow-up message. Man, it was good to see you on campus, and I look forward to the next time. And good luck with whatever it is. You mentioned something, whatever it is. So just remembering something that they're dealing with, like that pays dividends down the road.
Absolutely. I want to clarify one thing before we end on jazz. There was a quote that you shared about leading with gratitude. Do I have that right? Is there a D at the end of lead, or am I mishearing it? And is it leave with gratitude? Did you say if you had a sign in front of Babson and you could put
Both,
anything on
both.
it?
Both. Um, when my last comments in front of the faculty at last all faculty meeting was, I feel like I was well trained. Well, I was raised well by my parents. Never go somewhere and leave without expressing thank you and expressing gratitude. So there is a sense of leaving with gratitude. What I actually said earlier, though, was leading with gratitude for the team that you lead, for the community, for the institution, for the college, and now for the university that you lead, with a
Mhm.
sense of gratitude for the people who share that community. And I have just seen examples of leaders who express zero gratitude for the people that they share this space with. Zero gratitude. Even when it is such a low-hanging thing to do, to say
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Just don't understand it.
I think you've just had a bigger impact than you can realize because I think, confession to share, if any of my former students are watching this, I think after almost 2 decades of my job, there were moments maybe in the last year that I should have been uh, reminding myself and leading with gratitude and telling them, hey, look, I remember when I first got a job in academia, it felt like winning the lottery. And I'm thankful for you guys. Even if I don't think that, walking in late is acceptable or being distracted is acceptable, I think you guys could be so much better than what you are today. I think we have to remind ourselves, man, we are lucky to be in the field that we are in. And
It's
what a
awesome.
powerful thing for it
What
is awesome. It is
what
awesome.
what you do and within and beyond the classroom with your students, your current, your former, and prospective students, it's just
Mhm.
extraordinary. That interaction with you as a faculty member can change
Mhm.
their life in ways I know that you have seen it, but it changed their
Yeah.
life, it changed their perspective. It gives them tools to successfully navigate the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be thankful for that opportunity? It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, sometimes, the behavior of another person, especially if you're experiencing sort of a repetition of the same thing year in, year out, or you've taken some time away, you've come back, and then you see the dysfunctionality, whether it is moments in your organization or dysfunctionality in terms of people's behavior in the classroom. It can test your patience. And I guess you know this better because you're a parent. Do you have any secret for maintaining patience when people are testing your patience? What can people expect from you? What are the tells that Larry is doing some kind of a breathing meditation in a meeting? What are your seriously? What are your secrets for not blowing it, not blowing your top when somebody's really tested your patience?
Yes. My staff will have had this joke where they know I'll say, facetiously, oh, I'm about to have a stroke, like my head pop off my shoulders, meaning I'm losing patience, and they can see my body language, right? Particularly when things aren't being done efficiency or aren't efficiently or going well. I really become quite agitated and irritated by that. Um, I do think, but perhaps the thing I've been most conscious of at Babson and being uh, a vice president, being a black male where there are so few, is that I represent something larger than myself. And so if I blow my top, if I react negatively, if I don't show a level of patience, then the next person who looks like me, who comes along in leadership, isn't afforded the same benefit of the doubt. So in many ways, you carry a burden larger than yourself. Now, would I love to just blow my top and go around and be like, I'm frustrated, I've lost patience, and so on and so forth? You have to recognize it is larger, the responsibility is larger than you are. I'm also very conscious of the fact there's a lot of new professionals in my division. They graduate, they've been finish a master's program, and their first job in higher ed is at Babson College under the Division of Learner Success and Campus Life, and I'm their vice president. And they are watching me in ways that I may not see, but they are definitely watching. And I'm their example of what leadership in their industry, in their field, looks like. And so the way you treat people, the way you react to trouble or the way you have a bad day, the way you walk by and ignore someone who might be having a bad day, the way you make someone who doesn't have nearly the power and influence feel small
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sets a tone that I just find, unacceptable. And then the flip side is true. When they see someone doing it the right way, it becomes their model, really potentially for the rest of their life, for the rest of their career. And they say, I actually learned that my first vice president at Babson College was a guy named Larry Ward. He's actually now president of the University of Hartford. And
So
that's an awesome responsibility.
thank you for cluing us into the internal monologue or sort
Yeah,
of calculation that goes into
the better for
inside your head. And now we will end on a note, pun intended, on jazz. You
yes,
quoted in your last commencement speech at Babson, Gregory Porter.
yeah,
There's an amazing line that I need to highlight: the bones of love. You will find no love dying amongst the bones of love. There were some incredible lines from what you quoted. So feel free to riff on Gregory Porter.
yeah.
But more importantly, what does jazz teach you about leadership? What can it teach an entrepreneurial leader of any kind? And I'll add one more question to all that, which is if somebody doesn't get jazz, name a few pieces by a few artists as a starter kit for appreciating jazz if somebody just doesn't get it.
Yeah. So jazz I think at its best, has always been creative. It's been about improv, and it's been about joining your musicianship with others. And so some jazz artists can sit, and someone's playing piano or playing horn, and someone jumps on the piano and joins them, and it goes off in a direction that maybe they hadn't anticipated. You feel it. And so to me, often leadership feels not improvised per se, but there's a certain amount of it that's extemporaneous. And the better you are at it, the more you know that I came in with this plan, but it was clear that plan wasn't going to work. This sheet of music wasn't going to work, so I went off in a different way. And people joined me. They picked up the rhythm. We started vibrating on the same frequency, and we actually achieved more than the plan had called for. Jazz and leadership, I think for sure, can go well together. The death of love is everywhere, but I won't let it be. It's about death, what amongst what Gregory Porter calls the bones of love. The signs of the death of love are everywhere, but I won't let it be. And so for me, that is the that has just sort of resonated. What responsibility do you have to be a beacon of hope and inspiration for others amongst the bones of love? I had a friend, another leader on campus, had a very, very bad interaction with a senior leader that left them feeling low, in tears, and just completely torn apart. And they found their way to my office. I'm not this person's supervisor. They don't work in my division, but they came to my office. The bird that flew in through my window simply lost his way. I helped him heal, and then he flew away. So that to me just sort of encaptures my approach to leadership, that one-on-one behind closed doors, outside of the curated glow of social media, where you use your skills, your abilities, your superpowers to help fix a broken wing and allow someone to pick themselves up and fly. This is both my leadership mission and, dare I say, my ministry. And so this is what I heard in listening to jazz. This is what I heard in listening to Gregory Porter, the Death of Love, or No Love Dying is the name of the song. And so music is that inspiration for me, not literal interpretation, but inspiration that allows me to see the possibilities for my leadership, the possibilities for entrepreneurial leadership, and I think the possibilities for being a difference maker in an often needy and troubled world.
Beautifully said, and I know it's authentic because I've seen it. So beautifully, beautifully said and done. Uh, Starter kit. If somebody doesn't get jazz, who should they start with? Gregory Porter. You quoted Ray Charles before. Let it be what it be. Was that the line?
I'm gonna make it do what it do.
Going to make it do what do with it. Ray
So
Charles, you would classify as jazz. First of all, Ray Charles is a jazz artist.
Ray Charles is sort of in a category by himself, but certainly
Yeah.
can play a lot of jazz.
Okay.
I don't know. There's so many. I think I would probably start with Duke Ellington, with Coltrane,
Okay,
um,
Coltrane.
maybe with Etta James.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I probably start with some of those older artists. That's sort of the traditional jazz. But Gregory Porter is just like, if you can get into that, maybe start on the other side. Maybe I'll switch that up and say, start with Gregory Porter, 'cause he's a singer, but it's jazz. And if that moves you, then move backwards in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I end up posting this somewhere, I will include possibly links. Um,
Some old Quincy Jones, right? Like that's where Quincy Jones
oh,
got to start as a trumpeter.
I didn't know that he was ever a jazz musician.
Yes, yes. And there's a guy who takes music and, as a composer, as a producer, doing the Grammys, doing the color purple, whether he's scoring a movie. I mean, that all started with jazz and improvisation. And one of his earliest collaborators, Ray Charles.
Huh. Question I've been dying to ask somebody who actually knows this stuff. Quincy Jones, I was first turned on to him by a little known album called Q's Juke Joint in the
Yeah,
1990s, where the artists of the time did honor to the songs that he produced or
yes,
composed.
yes.
And it turned me on to how many hits. There's somebody else who's been this producer behind the scenes. I'm blanking on his name, but we just don't know the sweep of artists that some of these producers have made. Like the sound that we love, the melody, the hook, everything is. I wish I could.
There is no Michael Jackson without Quincy Jones.
That's the question I wanted to ask you. Michael Jackson, when he actually was producing the hits that stuck in our heads, that defined music, pop music during that era, that was Quincy Jones, right? Once Quincy Jones and him broke up, you
Yeah,
have this tinny sound.
his first album, Michael
Yeah,
Jackson solo album,
yeah.
was Quincy Jones, Rod Temperton. They put that album together. If you go look at it as a documentary, I think it's 25. They also put Thriller together. Thriller was a monster. That's all Quincy Jones. I mean, that's the genius of Michael Jackson, but that's Quincy Jones at his very best.
And am I right to? I'm not a musicologist. I'm not an aficionado, but would you say that the sound of Michael after they broke up with Quincy Jones, it just sounds tinny. There's no soul compared to what there used to be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just went off musically, went off in a different direction. There are um, very few of those sort of monster hits in my judgment from the you know from the Michael Jackson Off the Wall. That was the
Mm.
first album, and then followed by Thriller. Um,
So
Go
this
back
this
and
might
listen.
seem like
Now, Michael had written most of that music for Off the Wall.
uh,
Want to be starting something and all that, but the musicianship that Quincy brought to it took it to another level.
thank you for explaining that. And it's Nile Rodgers, the other name I was looking for, a producer that whether it's working with Stevie Ray Vaughan on the guitar solo of "Let's Dance" by David Bowie, whether it's the disco era, whether it's Madonna, Nile Rodgers is another one of these producers that I guess it's safe to say generations didn't know the name, but they knew the product.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this might seem off topic, but is there a lesson for leadership? Quincy Jones and Nile Rodgers were, as you described, providing the tailwind for these artists.
yeah. It means that even the most capable leader, even the most capable artist, that is fundamentally has God-given skills,
A genius.
needs somebody, a genius,
Yeah,
needs somebody, another genius in the booth, right?
yeah, yeah.
That says I can take it, it's like putting it's like super friends, right? Taking your superpowers and putting them together, but you got to be open to it.
Yeah. So I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Lawrence P. Ward, Vice President at Babson College, now President-elect of Hartford University. We wish you the greatest of success being a producer at your next gig,
Thank you.
of being the tailwind for both broken birds and birds that don't need the help, but can take it to the next level with the right headwind, or
Yeah,
rather the right tailwind.
with the right
And
tip.
maybe provide the right headwind if they need adversity to soar.
There you
How's
go.
that for
There you go.
how's that for a
Look at
metaphor?
you. That's putting the lessons right into play right there. I'm in your ear, man. You're the quarterback, and I'm in your ear. I love it.
We're vibing. We're vibing. If anybody's wondering why my name kept flashing on the screen, it's because I asked Larry Ward whether it's weirder to have two devices with my image on them or one of them with the video muted. We needed two devices because one's the sound, one's the video. If you're still watching, thank you. With huge gratitude to you guys who are watching and listening. With tremendous gratitude to Larry Ward. I will miss seeing you on campus. I hope this is not the last time that we have a conversation.
Likewise.
Yeah, no, thank you, thank you, thank you for your time. And even though we didn't have daily interactions or even weekly or monthly, it was always great to see you. And I hope other people at your next gig likewise are lifted up just by seeing the sight of Larry on campus.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Huge gratitude.
All right. Cheers, my friend.
Take care. And make sure to send me the recording.
All right. Will do.
Thank you, sir.